Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello there and welcome to yet another week. Yeah, it's another week and it's a beautiful Monday and it's ridiculous weather for this time of year, which happens to be, by the way, the later days of July 2013. It's the 29th. And we're heading into, my head is completely focused on baseball, right? Sorry. I don't even look at the news. I look at the sports section. I'm looking at box scores. I'm beyond obsessed. So you'll forgive me if you're not a baseball fan. But wow. In case you missed it, there's like just huge series here in Pittsburgh beginning this evening between us and the only team in baseball with a better record, and that would be the St. Louis Cardinals, who are just a game and a half in front of us. Oh, so let's see. I was looking at some of the things that I noted that were in the news over the weekend, and there's a strange sameness to these pieces, although they're from various locales and all over the map, and at the base of almost all of them is gender. Isn't that amazing? I mean, people have, it's amazing how humanity clings to these totally unscientific bases for categorizing ourselves and others. I'm talking, not only about race, but also about gender. One thing, as we've grown more knowledgeable, I almost said wiser, and I don't think more knowledgeable necessarily means wiser. But as we've become, as a species, more knowledgeable, I think we recognize that race is a totally man-made construct, that it's foolish, that it doesn't hold up to even the most cursory scrutiny from a scientific perspective. And gender as well. We've finally, I think, but we're further behind on this. Maybe not. I don't know. We're finally acknowledging that sexuality is much more complicated than you're either that or you're this. You're either male or you're female. I think most people will acknowledge that sexuality is on a continuum of some sort, and that of the billions of people on this earth, their sexuality gets stuck somewhere along the line, but it is, each sexuality is probably unique. in many respects. So this effort to categorize people and or discriminate against people based on where they fall on that human line is really, well, it's sad. It also can be murderous as a result. These kinds of silly efforts to define people down to categories invariably leads to discrimination, leads to fear, leads to hate, leads to violence, yada, 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 yada. So, I mean, I was looking at some of the things that, and I guess the good news is if so many stories at heart are about that, then it means that we are struggling with it, which is good. It means that this is not some quiet thing anymore, or some obviously accepted thing, that you're either a man or you're a woman. That there are so many institutions, nations, states, governmental entities struggling to come to terms with our newer understanding about human sexuality. I guess that's good. Now, the story I haven't talked about that really broke big last week is one that Jess drew my attention to, and it's one I do want to bring up above all these others, and that is the increasingly eyebrow-raising, scary homophobia and violence that has gotten backing by the Russian government. There are many reasons to recoil at Vladimir Putin. There's something so creepy about him. He really does seem a frightening throwback. The fact that he got his start in the KGB of the Soviet Union is not at all difficult to imagine as one looks at him, listens to him, and watches the way he practices politics. But Putin, and I really credit Harvey Fierstein. Is that how it's pronounced? Steen? Oh, it's not one of those Steinstein. I don't know, Steinstein.
I don't know. I'm not
Bernstein, Einstein. I know most people know Einstein, although I heard somebody say Einstein the other day.
I think it's Steen.
Fierstein.
I think so.
Really? Anyway, he is a Broadway, as you know, I think, actor and I think producer. And also a gay rights activist. He wrote an op-ed piece that the New York Times published last week about Putin's frightening homophobia. And you may or may not know that just a few weeks ago, Putin signed a law that bans the adoption of Russian children to gay couples or, get this, to any couple and or single person living in a country that allows gays to marry. So, in other words, with the signing of this law, no American Well, that's not true. I guess Americans, depending on their state at this point. I don't know how but any country who signs off on gay marriage will then be denying their citizens of adoption in Russia, although it doesn't seem right to place the blame on them. Now, he also signed a law, get this, that allows the police in Russia to arrest tourists, foreign nationals, who the police suspect may be homosexual, or who police suspect may be pro-gay. So this new law allows them to arrest any foreign person on Russian soil who they believe to support gay rights or be gay themselves, and to detain them for up to 2 weeks. Now, this comes, how many, when did the Olympics? 6 months. Comes 6 months before Russia plays host to the Winter Olympics. And there is going to be an increasing drumbeat to, I suspect, to not participate in the Olympics in Russia if it would mean placing some of our athletes and or some of our nationals in harm's way by virtue of the fact that they'll be traveling to a country that can arrest them and detain them for simply believing in equality for all people. This comes after, I don't know, Americans are notorious for not paying any attention to anything that's going on in their own country, let alone anybody else's country. But there have been horrific acts of clearly state-sponsored violence against gay people in Russia. So that to hold a gay rights parade, a pride parade, for instance, in Moscow, is literally to put yourself in harm's way. The Russian Orthodox Church, to its shame, has been marching in lockstep with Putin on this issue, and sermons have sent Russian Orthodox into the streets looking for gays to beat up. To be gay in Russia today is a very, very dangerous reality. So Putin also signed in June another anti-gay law. I mean, they're just coming out of the hopper there faster than you can even digest them. Another anti-gay law classifying what the Russians call homosexual propaganda as pornography. What they mean by that is anything having anything to do with acknowledging gay people, their work, their art, their struggles, their this, their that, is pornography. The law is so broad that anyone who would make anything even vaguely sounding like a pro-gay statement could be arrested. Even a judge or a lawmaker who seemingly says something that could be said to argue for more tolerance toward gay people could be arrested. It is also rumored that Putin is about to sign a law that would remove children from their families if the parents are gay or suspected of being gay. To be gay in Russia today is to be under constant threat of terror, threat of life and limb and any measure of freedom. This kind of targeting by a nation state of one group we have seen before in human history, have we not? And it never leads anywhere good. And it would seem that nations should learn that we shouldn't play nice with other nations that go off the deep end like this. This looks frighteningly like this kind of thing that was going on in 1936 Germany when they hosted the Olympics, right? And it's the same old tactic. Take a minority, demonize it for political gain, the political gain always being distraction from the real problems that the nation struggles with, and instead make this the focus of the people, those gays, those Jews, right? My sense is I'm usually against these calls for boycotts of, Olympics. I was joking about Lindsey Graham saying we should boycott the Olympics because what was his reason? It was so silly, it was beyond belief. I can't remember. If one of you does, let me know. But something as big as this, the targeting of the criminalization of a whole category of humanity, that's pretty damn big. The IOC is aware of it. The IOC has never been a bastion of known to do the right thing. A bastion of what? Self-interest, I guess. At any rate, keep your eye on it. There's no doubt that in our delegation to the Winter Games, there will be many gay athletes. No doubt. If they are already out, dare they go? Would they be arrested? In terms of our coaches, our support staff, the parents of, the siblings of, American nationals wanting to go and enjoy the games. I don't know. So that's that was one. Then we get to this. We go from the horrors of Putin's Russia to the horrors of Harrisburg. And the Post-Gazette, in a front page story today, noted that Pennsylvania is the only state in the Northeast that does not protect its gay citizens from discrimination. We are the only state. Is this a big shock? We are the only state that does not add sexual orientation. So it's not just gays, it's anybody who doesn't comfortably fit in the old paradigm of you're either a man or a woman. You're either a heterosexual man or a heterosexual woman. Those are the only kinds of people that Pennsylvania safeguards. They will not add, there have been numerous efforts to their discrimination laws that, of course, prohibit discrimination based on race, on ethnicity, right? Disability. In Pennsylvania, it doesn't have anything about if you're not heterosexual. Then you're fair game. So that means that in Pennsylvania, and maybe we didn't know this, but in our state, if an employer doesn't like gays, the employer can throw them out on the street if he or she inadvertently hired them in the first place. Or they don't have to hire a person qualified for the job if their sexual orientation doesn't pass muster with the boss. I mean, that is so outrageous on its face. So the story talks about the stories of a number of people who, because they live in this regressive state of Pennsylvania, have lost their jobs, lost their livelihood, because they happen to work for a bigot. And they had no legal recourse. They have none. This is Pennsylvania. They talk about one woman. Listen to this. This is legal in Pennsylvania. It would not be legal in, I don't know how many states of the Union, but there's not another state in the Northeast that this would be legal in. I give you a woman, Laura Warden. She moved to Western Pennsylvania for a job. She got the job. She rose to a high level of management in the work that she had chosen. She bought a house. She is the mother of 2 children. But somehow it never came up, but she happened to say to her boss that her spouse or the other adult in the family was not a man, but was another woman. And no sooner did that information come out than she was fired. She was fired like that. She, of course, went straight to a lawyer thinking, you can't do that. You can't do that because of who I choose to live with. She went to lawyer after lawyer, and they all told her the same thing. There is no law that protects you in the state of Pennsylvania from discrimination. And there is story after story after story. Now, obviously, there have been efforts, as a matter of fact, legislation that would add sexual orientation to the list of protected classes under Pennsylvania's anti-discrimination law. I mean, these bills have been introduced for the last 12 years. Since 2001, the bill's been introduced, bill's been introduced, bill's been introduced. It got out of committee once. It got out of the initial step once. And then died before it got through a million other. It died then, which doesn't speak too well of Pennsylvania. But the amazing thing is that that's the only time in the last 12 years it got out of committee. It has never even gotten out of the state government House committee, where the bill is invariably sent, because this is not going to surprise any of you, because guess who heads that committee? The Republican-controlled House obviously then has Republicans heading all these committees. Guess who heads? Guess who heads the committee that would have to sign off on this anti-discrimination bill to get it to the floor, to get it on its way to the floor? Yes, you are correct. Daryl Metcalfe. And Daryl Metcalfe has ensured that that bill never sees the light of day. The only time it got out of the committee was the 1 year that apparently he was not chairing it. And then, as I said, it never made it to the floor anyway. And Metcalfe says he thinks the bill itself is discriminatory because it will discriminate, according to him, against the rights of individuals who have religious objections to that type of lifestyle. That is no different than what bigots said about having a bill to deny bigots the right to discriminate against people based on their skin color. That was the same thing. And bigots like Metcalfe said then, well, if, my religion doesn't want me consorting with people of the, with large amounts of pigment. Always the same suspects, right? That great Casablanca line, round up the usual suspects. Daryl Metcalfe. You think it doesn't matter that the folks in Cranberry keep sending this bigot to represent them in the House in Harrisburg? It matters mightily. It matters a lot to the woman who now is out of work, despite the fact that she rose through the ranks because she was qualified, but works for some guy whose probably religion tells him that he cannot employ or aid and abet people living this lifestyle. That in itself is absurd. What does that lifestyle mean? She and her partner have a house, they have children, they feed and clothe and educate their children and send them to school, they work, they pay their taxes. That lifestyle sounds strangely like, well, maybe your lifestyle. I'm taking a break. When we come back, more on the world wrestling with the fact that some people don't have the exact same sexual proclivities that Daryl Metcalfe has. In a minute.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Check out my new time machine.
Does it work?
Hit the button.
Hey, it's Napoleon.
Oui. Check out the future.
Hey, you have a nice house. Why don't I?
You didn't save any money, buddy.
If only there was a way I could go back in time and fix that.
Yeah.
Save something for the future. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free ways to save, go to feedthepig.org. That's feedthepig.org.
This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
This week's Pittsburgh City Paper is available now. Pick up one today for information on the Summer Beer Fest at Stage AE, plus Sugar Ray, Jam on Walnut, Smash Mouth, Summer Safari, Tribal Seeds, Gin Blossoms, and Oleander. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone with GPS-enabled listings at citypapermobile.com.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
Okay, and then we have the Pope finishing up his tour of Brazil. Brazil? Mm-hmm. Yeah. See how much I've been following that. flying back to the Vatican and speaking to reporters on the plane and saying, quote, this: if a person is gay and seeks God and has goodwill, who am I to judge him? Whoa. I don't suppose Daryl Metcalf is Catholic, is he? Because if he were, you could send him the Pope's statement. If the Pope doesn't think he can judge them, then I wonder how Daryl thinks he can. If a person is gay and seeks God and has goodwill, who am I to judge him? Well, now, we know. I mean, if you're, you can say, yeah, well, but still, the church, blah, 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 blah. This Pope is such a relief from the last few, if you ask me. He clearly is more humane. He clearly is more in touch with a sense of love and humility that Jesus taught and personified. And for that alone, I wish him all the best. I mean, obviously. And then he goes on to say that women should have a greater role in the church. But as regards ordination of women, he says that door is closed. So even this more progressive Pope Francis can't go there, I guess. And he also has this, he falls for this sense of, like, gays, I guess, trying to, here's what he says. Tell me what you make of this. He condemned lobbying by gay people and other lobbyists. But he says, the problem is not having this orientation. We must be brothers. The problem is lobbying by this orientation. What does that mean? What is he talking about? Gay people politically organizing and, like, trying to... Is that what he's talking about? How's that a problem? That's a basic human right, if you ask me. And then he says, and explain this to me. The problem is lobbying by this orientation, gay people, or lobbies of greedy people, political lobbies, Masonic lobbies. So many lobbies, says the Pope. This is the worst problem. First of all, I need to know this, and I really don't understand it. What's with the Masonic thing in the Catholic Church? Why, when he and his papal head is thinking of the real problems, he thinks of the pressure that he's feeling from gay rights activists, the pressure he feels from other political lobbies, and then he singles out Masonic lobbies. What the hell does that mean? And why is it? I really don't understand it. My father was a Mason. What does that mean? What was terrible? I thought it was just it was one of those organizations that men belonged to that did, like, nice things and
supposed to be satanic.
They're satanic?
Those, like, little pamphlets that the crazies had.
Oh, yeah. But there's some long history there with the Masons in the Catholic Church that I just don't understand, and I don't. And he doesn't like the, being in the Pope Mobile. He really, really, really hates that thing, and good for him for that too. Even though we have seen attempted assassinations, have we not, of popes? He says, I don't feel afraid. No one dies before their time. And he said, I don't want to see the people who have such a great heart from behind a glass box. He admits that he's undisciplined in that respect, and his security teams are having heart attacks left and right. But anyway, I like this pope as much as I'm going to like any pope. If a person is gay and seeks God and has goodwill, who am I to judge him? Wonder what the other pope, Benedict, is thinking. Seriously, wonder what the other pope is thinking. Email from Tom. This is in regard to my rant last Friday about today's parents and the coddling of their children and the smuggling of things into summer camp for them when they sign contracts saying they won't send certain things to their children while their children are at camp, and the picking them up at the school bus and stuff like that. That just makes me, it really does make me mad. When I see those little scrums of parents standing around waiting for the bus every day, I think, and then sometimes, I'll see the kids get out, and some kids, and maybe if they're like, kindergarten or first grade, okay, I get that maybe. But kids get out who are like, they're 10, 11 years old. Give me a break. Okay, so Tom writes about that. You were cracking me up with your rant about over-attentive parents. I'm amazed that the school buses here in Murraysville stop at almost every house. I've seen that, too, in my neighborhood, where they stop in front of a house. And then there are parents who meet the bus that stops in front of the house at the bottom of the driveway, and we're not done yet, in the family car. I've seen that, too. So you have a kid being let out of a school bus, essentially in his front yard, and you have the parent still being there, not willing to risk their child walking up the driveway into the house by themselves. And the parent, pampered, won't stand outside at the bottom of the driveway in the winter. And so they sit in their cars with the motor running. And how are you not supposed to want to, scream at these people? Tom says, when I first noticed this, the children were in the primary grades, I could tell. But over the years, those kids have grown into high schoolers, and you still see it. When I was in grade school, and he goes on, yeah, we know, you walk 5,000 miles to Homewood School on Hamilton Avenue, and now I'm seeing kids that can't walk by themselves to the edge of the property line. How are those kids ever going to grow up and feel they can navigate the big bad world? How? It's unbelievable. Okay, here's something else now that's got to be in my bonnet. Did you see the thing about in England, there has been a great deal of pressure by some feminists to get a woman's picture on one of their, on the money. It's all men. You mean Queen Elizabeth isn't on her? Well, sure she is.
Yeah, I thought she was.
Yeah, she is. Maybe a civilian woman, because they have civilian men. I don't know. But anyway, so they have announced, the Bank of England, they will put a woman on a banknote, and that will be Jane Austen, novelist, on the new 10-pound notes. He'll be Jane Austen. But it got me thinking about our money. All right. Was there, Susan, I was thinking, was there ever a woman? There have been a few. Susan B. Anthony on something that nobody ever uses, I think on a coin. Sacagawea on what?
I thought they were dollar coins.
Were those dollar coins too? Well, those are the two, right? Anybody have any others? Now you stop, but let's talk about the notes, the bank notes. Those are all white men. Come on. Let's think outside the box. Martin Luther King should be on a note, right? Who's on a note that none of us give a damn about? Think about them. We wouldn't kick George Washington off. We wouldn't kick Lincoln off. We won't kick Franklin off. Andrew Jackson. Yeah, what do we care about Andrew Jackson anymore? I mean, out. Out. And I even argue Alexander Hamilton can go as far as I'm concerned. Although he's sort of cute, isn't he? There needs to be a woman. There needs to be some diversity. There really does. And I've never even heard it's never even occurred to anybody around here, has it? Now, have you ever missed seeing a woman on come on. I mean, in the greater scheme of things, this is not a huge issue. I wouldn't go to the barricades over it. But it is indicative of a mindset that, is just constantly coming at boys and girls. And if all you ever see are white males who are honored and held up, then, you think that doesn't work on people's senses of who they are or what their possibilities would be? It does. It really, 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 really does. Oh, everybody's on vacation. Nobody's talking to me. Am I sitting here doing I'm doing a mon? I feel like an idiot. I'm one step removed. If I did what I'm doing now, right now, just 22 stories below me on the street, on the sidewalk, people would think I was insane. Talking to nobody. Oh well. I don't mean to complain much. We'll take a break and return in a moment.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen live after this.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on gift cards from your favorite local restaurants, bars, museums, attractions, and shows. This week, great deals on vet services from Bellicoop. Bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. Bergbargains.com.
So when you get to the corner of Smith and Orchard, you're going to want to take a left.
You are not going to
Then what you're going to do is turn onto Marcy
and Brett
Avenue.
just broke up,
and go past the first 3 lights,
happy
and then
about
take
it.
the next left.
I don't really
then
think
drive 5
she's
more
happy,
blocks,
but
and you should be
who
there.
am I to judge, right?
Park on the
Anyway,
right.
That's
I'll
what
see
I
you
heard
later
last
tonight.
night.
It's hard to concentrate on 2 things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen live.
All right, good question. NP asks, in regard to the Post-Gazette story of the woman, Laura Warden, who moved here, got a job, worked her way up, 2 children, blah, 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 new house, and then gets canned because the boss finds out she's a lesbian. And she had no recourse. Because Pennsylvania has no law denying employers the right to throw people out of work because of their sexual orientation. And NP writes, why do you suppose the Post-Gazette didn't identify the company that Laura Warden worked for and that threw her out once it became known she was a lesbian? It's a good question, because the company was not identified, other than it's somewhere here in Western Pennsylvania. The only thing I can think of off the top of my head is that this is her account of why she lost her job. And it could be that the employer, if the employer was contacted by the reporter, said it had nothing to do with her sexual orientation. It had to do with blah, 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 blah. And because this woman was never able to go to court because no lawyer wanted the case, because there's no law saying that what happened to her was wrong, that there was no way to sort out the he said, she said aspect, perhaps, of it. And so the PG maybe didn't want to tarnish the employer, if in fact it were possible that there was some other cause, even though she certainly, I mean, her story is no. I mean, it was so obvious, the cause and effect. And it was her sexual orientation. But that's the only thing I can come up with for why it wouldn't be a matter of the PG protecting the employer, but it could be the PG not wanting to get into a situation where they could be accused of slandering someone. But I don't know. And I guess what's odd is that in a story like that, where the question does arise in the reader's mind, what jerk, what company would do this to somebody? That you would think a reporter writing a story like that might at least say that they had contacted the person, the other person, the company, and they had denied that there would be some explanation of why we weren't hearing either the other side of the story, or I don't know. It's a good question, and I've given you my my BSE response to what it might be, but I have no idea if that would be it. Ray has heard my plea about lobbying, and I thought you were going to tell me about the Masons, Ray. Okay, here's what he says, Lynn, in regard to what the Pope said about lobbying. I would think he means that working to promote or normalize lifestyles that the church deems sinful is different than being a human being prone to weaknesses and finding oneself in a sinful situation. Okay. Ray goes on to say, I am in an unsanctioned marriage in the eyes of the church. Oh, Ray, what'd you do? You married a divorcee or something? Or you're a divorced person? Is that something like that, right? I am in an unsanctioned marriage in the eyes of the church, and therefore I am excluded from the sacraments. Oh, God. I myself feel no real hurt by this. Good. And I am never called out on it, as they would get no more than a derisive laugh from me. But I have to admit I would never promote my choice as equal to a sanctioned one. So you believe in playing by the rules. So if the church sets the rule that you cannot divorce, I'm just assuming that's what it is, unless it's that you married a non-Catholic. I don't know. But I don't think that would deny you a sacrament, would that? Yeah, maybe it would. So anyway, whatever. But so you play by the rules, so you're not going to complain that you can't get the sacraments because you knowingly married outside that rule, and you'll accept whatever comes as a result. Mm-hmm. But you could lobby. You could lobby to change that. There's nothing wrong with people pushing up against those rules. It's one thing to flout them. It's another thing to fight them. And I think both are, legitimate choices. Ray goes on to say, imprinting the young with deep beliefs works, or they wouldn't have lasted 2,000 years. Yeah. Oh, no. You know me. I have said more than once, hi, caller, that the Catholic Church is the most successful institution in human history that I'm aware of. Hello? Caller. Hi. Caller. Hi. Yeah, I mean, I'm not aware of another institution that has literally existed for over 2,000 years and remains a huge force and has been a huge force in human history, like the church. Caller, go ahead, please.
Hi, Lynn. It's me again. I got cut off.
Oh, sorry.
Hi. Nobody else was calling, so I thought I would call.
That was very nice of you. I don't know. Everybody's taking the summer off. This always happens every summer.
Well, it is very nice outside lately.
It is so perfect.
Yeah, after the last couple of crappy weeks. Hey, a few weeks ago, I emailed you about a theory I have about guys having girls as their firstborn if the guy smokes pot when all the important events happen. And I said I had a theory about it.
Yeah.
And you and your cohort up there thought that was very amusing. Wanted to hear my theory, so I thought I'd tell you my theory.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Okay. First off, we're talking men and women usually in their college years. And let's face it, in those days, at that age, women are far more directed and far more focused on what they need to do, whereas guys are just stupid idiots. And like to sit around and drink beer and smoke pot. Which isn't to say that the women don't smoke pot too, but the guys definitely like to sit and smoke pot. So what you've got, and it's the men who determine the sex of the baby. They've got the relevant genes. So what you've got is all these little tadpoles sitting down there, and the guy is smoking pot, and all the male tadpoles are absorbing as much of this stuff as they can because that's what guys do at that age. They just sit around and they loaf. Whereas the girl ones, being focused and directed, know what they have to do when it comes time to do it. So when it does come time to do it, they go get the job done, and the kid becomes a girl. Because the guys are too stoned, they're all just sitting around figuring let the women do it. That's my theory. And everybody that I went to college with, the guys who smoked pot, all of their firstborn children were girls. And all the guys who didn't, 5 of them were boys, 1 of them was a girl. Now, if that's anecdotal evidence, I don't know, but it convinced me.
So men who smoke pot, you think, beget girls?
Certainly, in my history, looking at everybody that I know of, they do. And I can only think that's the only reason why, because all them little guys' sperm cells are too stoned to get the job done, because that's what guys do.
Okay.
Then they let the women go out and do the job.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't think your theory will hold up in any kind of scientific scrutiny, but thank you for the...
Well, I'd like to see somebody disprove it, bud.
Okay.
All righty.
Thank you,
Let's go
Dave.
Bucks.
Bye. You bet. Bye. Larry writes that I didn't finish my story on the Jane Austen on the money thing. You're right, I didn't. I got waylaid, got it back. I started talking about the United States. The fact is that the woman who pushed that change has apparently been threatened. Her life has been threatened. I've lost the story. The little bit I had did not. She's a Labour MP. She's a member of Parliament. Stella Creasy, her name. She's gotten rape threats. This is for wanting a woman on the money. Oh, God in heaven. Twitter has come under increasing pressure to review its abuse reporting systems after 2 of the women campaigning for this change have been threatened with rape. One said, "You better watch your back. I'm going to rape your ass at 8 p.m. and put the video all over the internet." There's just one disgusting thing after another. Oh. All right, so here's one of the women says, "It's sadly not unusual to get this kind of abuse, but I've never seen it get as intense or aggressive." Well, you're dealing with money here now, too. Money gets people nuts. It's infuriating that the price you pay for standing up for women is 24 hours of rape threats. We made the Bank of England change its mind. We can do the same with Twitter. So now they're after Twitter. Unbelievable. Or not. So, here's another quick little gender thing. Has to do with Iceland and the Miss World contest. It turns out the Icelanders are not really that into beauty pageants, but they do have one, and there is a Miss Iceland. Although she's been Miss Iceland for 2 years, because last year they just didn't get around to having another pageant. And, she goes on and competes at the Miss Universe or Miss World contest. And there's an effort by people opposed to the idea of beauty pageants in Iceland to really just destroy what is left of this not very successful Miss Iceland contest in the first place. And what has happened is that a number of people have entered the contest, including an 80-year-old woman, a prominent member of the nation's parliament, a few men. Within, I guess, in the last week, over 1,000 people have agreed to get into the contest to muck it up. And the poor guy who heads the thing says, "I have to follow the rules set by the international contest, and that means all applicants have to be young, between 18 or 24. They must be unmarried, and of course female." But instead, he's got all of these other types that are intent on showing up at all of the... So just Iceland is not into this silliness. That's sort of... or is into another kind of silliness. A cow was once stolen from a nearby farm and paraded through the hotel where the Miss Iceland competition was being held. Also, a cow was wearing a sash and a tiara, I guess. And here's some interesting news, good news. I told you last week about this. There was a big story. I want to say it was in the New York Times, yes, about how Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan were buying up all, these warehouses where the stockpiles of aluminum and copper are held, and how they had bought up huge pieces of the infrastructure that moves oil from tankers to pipelines. And even though it, not too terribly long ago, was absolutely outside of a bank's mission to get involved in such stuff. A bank is a bank, and they were not allowed to do this kind of thing. But, of course, in the 80s, things loosened up considerably with the Repubs in charge, and so banks got into doing this, in which they can manipulate the economy, manipulate the price of commodities, and generally cause trouble while making gazillions of dollars. Well, this, I think, out of the Wall Street Journal this weekend, J.P. Morgan has decided it's not going to keep on buying up all the copper in the warehouses that it can, and it's put that whole part of its banking business on sale. It doesn't want to play this game anymore. And it says here, J.P. Morgan has been a massive holder of physical commodities. It amassed a copper stockpile in recent years. It purchased a metal warehousing network that gave it more than 70 facilities on 4 continents. It's also the biggest bank in the natural gas storage business. And I guess they say that they're concerned that it looks like with new people perhaps in charge of the SEC and also the Fed, that these holdings might go back to being unkosher, and they're trying to get out now before they're forced out. So that is interesting. Whether or not, I don't know if Goldman Sachs is going to follow, but J.P. Morgan and Sachs were the two biggies that had all this infrastructure. And J.P. Morgan, right after I found out that they were doing it in the first place, looks like they're going to get rid of it. That they suspect it is not a wise thing for them to do. You can bet that, this all has to do with number crunching, and they worry about regulation. Good. As well they should. And the other good news before I leave you is, of course, this news that Cumulus, which owns about 40 radio stations across the country and is the second largest group that carries radio talk shows, apparently it is dumping Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity from their stations. And I guess most of their stations carry both those shows, and some of those stations are in big markets. And they're going to drop Limbaugh and Hannity because they're too expensive and they don't bring in enough money because major advertisers don't want to be anywhere, don't want to be polluted by them. That's the good news. The bad news is that, believe me, there will always be another station in a market, I would think, that will happily pick up those shows. But whatever, it's always nice to see those two singled out as particularly noxious and not particularly profitable. Okay, that's it. All I have to say to you is one thing and one thing only. Go Bucks! I'm so worried. I am so worried. They've looked a little shaky. I'm very, very worried. But go Bucks! Man, PNC Park is going to be stocked to the gills. Really. For 4 nights in a row. I'd love it. Okay, bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.